Greetings, Zimbabwe, Africa, and the world. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, Devolution Series Part 3, brought to you by the Zimbabwe Human Rights Association, ZimRights, supported by the Embassy of Switzerland in Harare. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today, my guest is Patrick Karanja, the Acting Director for Intergovernmental Relations in the Ministry of Devolution in Kenya. Enjoy this informative conversation. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, all the way from Nairobi, Kenya. Am I right?
Yes, you are very right, and thank you for welcoming me.
Wonderful, thank you. It's such a privilege having you, Mr. Karanja, on our Devolution series. Today we are on Devolution series part 3. We are live on a number of Facebook channels, including Heart and Soul Television, their Facebook platform, and the Human Rights Association of Zimbabwe Facebook platform. And our focus today is going to be on inclusive governance and economic transformation as a result of devolution. You are, at the moment, Mr. Karanja, the Acting Director for Intergovernmental Relations in the Ministry of Devolution. Talk us through the reasons, Mr. Karanja, that resulted in, on the 27th of August 2010, Kenya promulgating the new constitution that had a very strong component of devolution. And then March 23, devolution actually being rolled out. What was the background to the decision to say we need to go the devolution way?
What happened is that during the Cold War era, we had, like in many African countries, a one-party system in Kenya. And over the time, people started realizing that this one-party system was not really responding to the wishes of the people in matters of governance and economic development. And so there was a bit of agitation, but it gained momentum at the end of the Cold War season, because I think at that time, many African countries realized that the time had come to open up the political space. So in 1992, we moved from being a one-party system into a multi-party system in Kenya. However, we were a multi-party system in Kenya, but based still on the old constitution. So we also then realized that we were still not achieving what our objectives were in terms of creating sufficient political space for everybody to be able to express their views on matters of governance. And we were also not getting sufficient incorporation in matters of development in the country. So we realized that just having a multi-party system was not sufficient. We needed also to support the same with the opening up of the political space. And therefore we started a discussion on changing the constitution so that we can have a constitution that would help us move to the next level in our country. And so there was a bit of conversation. Trevor, you may also have noticed that in most cases, when you are trying to come up with a new constitution, your immediate past experience in political and economic affairs plays a very big role. Part of the constitution is supposed to be addressing some of the challenges that were encountered because of the political system that was there previously, a very highly centralized system. And so one of the things we decided to do is we had to decentralize the system. And we also realized one thing, and I think this is a challenge we seem to have in Africa, that the seat of the president is highly valued because of the kind of trappings of power and kind of privileges that the president can give to the people of that country. So every community wants a president from their community because they know what they are going to have. And so we realized that we also needed to address that aspect by also trying to disperse the power from the president to the decentralized units. In Kenya, we have the decentralized units, which we refer to as county governments. So one of the objectives, therefore, was to disperse political power from the presidency, to try to demystify the presidency, and try to reduce the agitation of everybody wanting to become a president. And by dispersing this power to the county level, to the subnational level, and also devolving resources to the subnational level, we then were of the view that then the focus now will more or less be at the county level, and we try to reduce the attention and the focus at the national level. So our immediate past experience really helped us to look into the future. And that's when we came up with a new system, the devolved system of government, where we have the national government and 47 county governments in Kenya.
I thought that the post-election violence in 2007, 2008 also had an impact on that decision. Am I wrong?
Yes, it is still part of our immediate past history.
Right,
but
right.
The conversation had started much earlier. The conversation to change the governance system had started immediately after 1992, when we realized that having a multi-party system in a country is a very good thing. But having a multi-party system in the country where the governance structure still supports a very highly centralized system doesn't help much. And I'll give you an example.
Sure.
In a highly centralized system, you still have the president calling the shots practically in everything. He has a lot of control in the legislative arm. The president has a lot of influence in the judiciary. The president has a lot of influence in most aspects of the country, but it is still a multi-party system. And we thought that it is still not addressing our concerns. So we decided that this multi-party system will become more effective if it is coupled together with a more devolved system. So the conversation had started. Come 2007, during the post-election violence, which was really a sad part of the history of Kenya, which has to a large extent been a peaceful country, that tended to accelerate that conversation. It catalyzed the whole discussion, and it created an impetus for us to eventually quickly reach into a new governance system. Probably should have taken us much longer because, trying to create a constitution, a new constitution, when you're not coming from our situation is a bit difficult. Yes. Because, yes, but now here we were not really in our situation, and for over 10 years we had been discussing about the constitution, but this post-election violence then accelerated that discussion, and it helped us eventually come to a decision of a new constitution, which we then promulgated in the year 2010.
Now, you were at the center, and this is where we are really privileged to have you, Mr. Karanja. You were at the center of the conception, law development, and implementation of this devolution. Take me through the key steps that had to be considered in coming up with this constitution, particularly the devolution component of it.
Well, I did play a very key role in the development of the constitution. What happened is that immediately after promulgation of the constitution, which has a chapter on devolution, and then it is at that point then I was part of the team that looked at that chapter on devolution and developed the various laws, statutes, legislation that would then guide how devolution would be implemented in this country. So my team developed the 6 critical laws that are then used to govern devolution in these countries. So maybe if I could start from that point, one of the things that, Trevor, maybe you may appreciate is that when you are devolving, you are basically transferring power and resources from the center. That is not a very easy thing. No. Remember, so those who are still, there are still those who are of the school of thought that a highly centralized system in Africa is a good system. And so trying to devolve power is not very easy. So that is one of the biggest challenges we had, to change the mindset, really. That was the biggest problem. But we started by developing 4 critical laws. One was the Public Finance Management Act. If we talk about devolution, the first thing we have to ask ourselves is whether the devolved units have the power to manage their resources. If they do not have, then we will not call it a devolution. We probably will call it a delegation, But one of the things we needed to do is to ensure that our devolved units have the capacity and have the powers to manage the resources that they receive. And the Finance Management Act that was developed to a large extent addresses that. But of course, Trevor, you realize that devolving resources also bring with it challenges of management of those resources. So again, apart from ensuring that there are resources which are going to be transferred to the county, and counties having the power to make decisions related to all those resources. So they do not get any directive from the national government. Whatever they wish to spend on, that is their responsibility. There are a few guidelines, of course, standards, but basically that's their responsibility. But then that also brings up another question of ensuring that they manage those funds effectively. So that is all contained in the Public Finance Management Act. Then we have the County Government Act. This, I would probably call it the Mother Act of the county government, because it contains all aspects of managing the county government. It basically states how the legislative arm of the county government will operate, and it also states how the executive arm of the county government will operate. And in operations of the county government, it gives details of who will be the members of the county legislative arm, and what will be their roles and the responsibilities, and how they will relate to the county executive. And then, of course, the part that talks of the county executive details who are the members of the county executive, what are their roles and responsibilities, and what are their obligations, and how they relate to the county legislative arm. So it's basically, I would say, to a large extent, a replica of what happens at the national level, where we have the legislative arm oversighting the executive arm, and the executive arm being responsible for executing the programs and development projects of the county government. So that is a kind of system that we have at the county level. And we also have the county legislative arm being responsible for passing county laws. In Kenya, we do have, the Constitution gives the county governments the power to pass county laws. And these county laws are then utilized by the county executive the county executive implements the county laws. And so it is more or less a kind of a replica at the national level. So the only thing at the county level which does not exist is the judiciary. So in Kenya, the judiciary is a shared institution. So the judiciary in Kenya ensures, enforces the legislation that is passed by the national government, and it also enforces the legislation that is passed by the county governments. So it is then a judiciary for the two levels of government. So
that's the second law.
The third law is what we call the Intergovernmental Relations Act. Now, this act, when you do then have the two levels of government, you realize, therefore, that there is a need to ensure that they work in harmony. And I think maybe that's where my department, Intergovernmental Relations Department, comes in.
Right.
When we do have these two levels of government, there is a very high possibility of conflict, overlaps, disagreements, disputes, for one reason or another. And we realize that then we have to put in a mechanism to ensure that when these issues arise, there is a mechanism to amicably resolve them. And that gave birth to this intergovernmental concept. So we then created the Intergovernmental Relations Act. This act creates some structure, the structures at the national level. And this structure at the national level is chaired by the president, and the members are the 47 county governors. So the membership is basically the head of executives, the executive heads of, in quotes, governments, in that it is the head of the national government, the government of Kenya, that's the president, and the other members are the governors who are the head of the 47 county governments. So that is the membership of the structure at the apex. And this is where, whenever we have any disputes that we have been unable to resolve at the lower levels, then they get escalated to the apex body. At a level lower than that, we have the intergovernmental sector forums. So this is where the sectors meet: agriculture sector, health sector, road sector, and they discuss issues related to the two levels of government. So if at the health sector, we have COVID now, and we have the responsibility of the national government. Health in Kenya is a devolved function. So the county governments are supposed to manage the COVID pandemic, but we realize it might be too much for the county, so the national government must come in to assist. So how does that happen? It happens during a conversation at the health sector forum. So the two levels meet at the health sector forum, discuss issues. Once they get resolved, fair enough. If they still have unresolved issues, then they escalate it to a level that is higher than that. And so that is the Intergovernmental Relations Act, principally to try and create harmony between the two levels of government and to create a process of resolving any challenges that may arise.
And the fourth law?
The fourth law is urban areas, Urban Areas and Cities Act. This one, it just lays out the modalities of managing urban areas and cities because they are critical structures in the county government. But just to clarify, urban areas and cities are structures below the county governments. So they are not independent. The municipalities in Kenya answer to the county governor because the municipalities have been created within a certain county. So they all answer to the county governor. But because of their importance in the economy and the social lives of the country, we created a law on how they'll be managed to try and find a way, ensure that they get kind of protected and they get sufficient resources to manage their affairs. The other law is which is now repealed, was the Transition to Devolved Government Act. As the name suggests, it was supposed to be an act that would guide how we would then transit from the previous constitutional dispensation, which was highly centralized, to the new, which is devolved. Since there was going to be a transition period, we created an act that would guide. The act provides on how functions are going to be transferred. The health function is now devolved. What would be the process of transferring the health function? What would be the process of transferring the staff to the county level? What would be the process of transferring the resources to the county level? And what would be the process of ensuring that the county governments have now created the requisite legislation to manage the health function within that county? So that act would then provide for all these processes that would be followed in transferring the functions to the county level, and all aspects related to the assets and liabilities that were previously, as if I still use the example of the health sector, the assets and liabilities which are attached to the health sector, they now have to be transferred to the county level because the county level has taken over the functions. So that process and the evaluation of the same and how to manage it are then contained in that act. So these were the key acts that my team, part of the team, our member of the team that developed these apps, and they're the ones now which are being used to manage the devolved system of government in Kenya.
Tell us who sits in the county executive? How is the county executive composed? Who sits there?
The county executive is composed of the governor and the deputy governor. These are the chief executive of the county government, and they run as a team during the elections. So the governor is required to have a running mate, and if they win the election, the running mate then becomes the deputy governor. And then they are required by law to appoint a maximum of 10, what we'd call ministers. But because they're at the county, we call them county executive members, but they're the equivalent of ministers at the national level. So each county has a governor, a deputy governor, and 10 executive committee members. So it's kind of a replica to the national level where we have a president, deputy president, and the ministers. Though, of course, at the national level, our ministers
the other 10 are appointed, not elected, Patrick?
No, they are appointed by the governor, but with the approval of the county executive. They have to undergo a vetting process.
Okay, so you sit at your relationship, or rather your job, sits right at the center of the central government and the county government. Tell me, what have been the biggest challenges that you've had to deal with since 2013 when this law was finally rolled out?
There have been several challenges, but the first big challenge is mindset. We were coming from, let me put it this way, we have the mindset of some officials, but I think over time it has started going down, but initially it was quite a big challenge. Officials at the national level not wanting to let go. If you are controlling funds at the national treasury, you'd want to, So at the national level, we had a mindset which didn't want to let go. At the county level, there was the opposite problem, where they wanted to, at some point, feel that they are autonomous of the country and were at some point maybe getting the impression that they would be a federal state and that there was that, they interpreted the autonomy a bit more liberally. And the national government was trying to tell them that, no, we are still a unitary country. We have the county governments, and the constitution has given them their functions, but we still operate within one space called Kenya. And I think the biggest challenge, therefore, is to get that mindset of trying to say we do not. You see, Trevor, the constitution says that our counties are distinct, and they're distinct from the national government. So that interpretation can create a problem, because a county government can say, I am distinct, I'm not answerable at all to the national government.
Right.
But we, at the national government, we say, yes, you are distinct, but you're operating within the national country called Kenya, for which the policies and the standards must be developed at the national level. So that has been one of the biggest the mindset problem, both at the national and the subnational level.
What's been the way of smoothing out that the tendency to want to control, the tendency to want to be autonomous? That's a tension there. How have you been? How has Kenya been able to manage that tension?
What we've done through my department is to have quite a number of meetings, because we realized that it's a mindset issue, and therefore we needed to have a discussion with the subnational level government so that they can appreciate that their autonomy is in terms of operation, but not autonomy in terms of statehood. And we had quite a number of operations, and we managed to get an understanding that if maybe just to give you an example, initially you'd get county governments when they're preparing their budgets. Well, the law tells them that you go ahead and prepare the budget as you wish. Look at your own aspirations, and for as long as the budget has been approved by the county assembly, then we are okay. But we then agreed that we needed to have a bit of guideline on how that should happen. While appreciating the autonomy of the county government, we also realized that the county governments are operating within the space of a country called Kenya, and Kenya as a country has got a certain development trajectory, and everybody should put efforts towards that trajectory. So much as you are autonomy, then we then have those guidelines to guide you. But, and this is critical, any of the guidelines and policies that we develop that impact on the county government, it's mandatory that the county government participate in developing those policies and guidelines. So we had several meetings, we talked to the county governments and the national government, and in the course of time, we have started appreciating that there is a need to ensure that we all move in one trajectory, but still retaining that autonomy. The national government does not dictate to the county government. It lets them understand the need and the importance of moving in a certain direction, in the hope that once they appreciate that, then the county governments on their own will, they'll do that. And that's what has been happening.
And any other challenges? Because I see that at some point, Patrick, your job there might not be any need for your office because you will have solved all the problems. What other problems are you facing right now?
It's a bit difficult to solve all this because every other day there'll always be an issue. Let me give you one interesting aspect.
Yes.
The functions have been divided and given to the two levels of government. I'll give you an example of security, which is retained by the national government. And the county governments have been given quite a number of functions. So let me just take one example called trade and agriculture. Those are the county government functions. However, for a county to effectively perform the function of trade and agriculture, it will require security. So the effectiveness of the county in performance of its functions to some extent relies on the effectiveness of the national government in performing its functions. And the national government, for it to perform its functions of security effectively, it will also require the county government to perform one of its functions. Street lighting in Kenya is under the county government. So since street lighting is connected to security, the national government is in charge of security, but the county government is in charge of street lighting. So then you realize that the two of them must always work together. And so where I come in, we do have cases of overlap of functions. Especially, we do have a category of functions in Kenya which are called concurrent functions, like disaster management. You find that it is the responsibility of the county, it is still the responsibility of the national government. So there's always an element of conflict. and a bit of misunderstanding. So what we do is to bring them together and agree on how that is supposed to happen. Yeah.
And just confirm to us that the portfolios that sit with central government will include foreign affairs, defense, policing. Which other ones?
Well, let me put it this way. The national government has been given the responsibility of policy of all sectors. All sectors. Okay. That basically means even if the function of agriculture or health or trade has been devolved to the county level, but the policy development, standards, monitoring and evaluation, and capacity building for all functions remains at the national level. Okay. So the national level will always do policy for all those functions. So that's first. Policy development of standards. The standards must be the same across all counties. So that one is developed by the national government, which then necessitates the national government to do monitoring and evaluation to ensure that the counties are meeting the standards. And of course, capacity building, because once you develop standards and you require county governments to meet those standards in the course of the operation, then there must be a policy to develop the capacity of the counties to be able to maintain those standards. So that is point number one. Point number two, economic policy and the macroeconomics of this country are the responsibility of the national government. Okay. So that is national government. Defense is the responsibility of the national government. Foreign affairs is the responsibility of the national government with assistance of the county government, because part of the functions of the county government have an impact. If you look at the border counties, they have a relationship with the other country. So there must be a way in which county governments are brought on board so that they can develop the foreign policy. But the foreign policy remains the responsibility of the national government. So policy in general, economics, economic policy and everything under the economic policies, including issues to do with debt management, we have to be clear that county governments do not generate debt to a level that it destabilizes the other economic indicators in the country. So that is why the national government must be in charge of the economic policy. And of course, defense, that one has to be the responsibility of the national government. Yeah.
There must be a different kind of tension. I might be wrong here, but I'm imagining that a county that is run by the opposition, the tensions are going to be slightly different from a county that's run by the ruling party. Am I correct there?
No, I think the most interesting thing in Kenya is that you will never tell which county is being run by the opposition or which county is being run by. You can never tell when they're in a meeting. And actually, the most interesting thing is that you will only know it's an opposition if they say so. But in terms of the operations, you can never tell. Because what counties in Kenya have done is that, they have their own association called Council of Governors, where all the governors come and sit.
47 of them.
47 of them. They actually just focus on matters that affect the counties. And at no point do the issues of politics arise. At all. They have never. Including when it is time, for example, to elect membership into their various committees. We see, for example, there is the head, the chairperson of the Council of Governors, and he's elected annually. And when it comes to elections, the issues of which party you come from does not feature at all. What they look at is the effectiveness of the governor to be able to fight for the rights of the counties. So in terms of politics, it doesn't appear in Kenya.
That's
in
interesting.
Yes.
That's interesting. Let's move now, Patrick, to the issue of sharing national raised revenues.
Yes.
And the formula that is used to do that, point number one. Point number two, what are the revenue sources for the counties, apart from the nationally raised revenues?
Well, for the nationally raised revenues, the Constitution has given a floor, let me call it a floor, but has not given a ceiling. Okay. So it simply says that the counties must receive not less than 15% of the nationally raised revenues as per the last audited accounts. Now that is the catch. Because the figure must be as per the last audited accounts audited and approved by Parliament, because national accounts, once they have been audited, they have to be presented to Parliament and approved. So if there is a delay of 2 years, then the 15% will be based on that 2 years delay. But in Kenya, I think the delay is never more than 1 year. The Auditor General makes sure that he gives that audit a lot of preference. So that is a minimum, 15% of nationally raised revenues.
And so that's equal, Patrick, across all the 47? They all get a 15%, that's X amount of dollars or what? No.
We have 2 levels of division.
Yeah.
The first level is the Treasury has to calculate how much was the revenue of this country in the last audited and approved accounts. And then the figure will be X. So they will get 15% of that X.
So that, each one of them gets 15% of that X.
No. That is the 15% will now go to the county level.
Right. Okay, I get it. I get you now.
So
Thank you for that.
So let me say, for example, if we had, for example, say 1 million shillings as the total revenue that was collected by Kenya and in the last approved audited accounts.
All right.
So they'll calculate 15% of that. That will be, say, 150 million.
Yeah.
Now, that is what will go to the county government. Now, another formula comes in. Yeah. How much will each county get out of this 15? And then we call it the secondary formula. Now, this secondary formula looks at various parameters: the land area, poverty levels, the population of that country, fiscal discipline. Fiscal discipline here is how much counties are able to manage their budget properly, and other issues related to that. And so all these things put together then help in determining the second level formula. And then that's what is now determined on how that 15% will be divided. However, I want to add one thing. Even though the law says that they should not get less than 15%, because of the functions that have been given to them, the national government has always given more than double of that.
Really?
So yes, the national government has been giving approximately 30% and above of the revenues as last audited. So it has always been higher than what the law says. Even though, of course, the county level still insists that is still not enough, they'd like to get more. But so there is what the law says, not less than 15%. In practice, it has always been more than double that.
Mm-hmm. And I also understand, Patrick, correct me, that there's pressure for the 15% or double the 15% to be increased to 45%. Are you experiencing that pressure from the counties that they want more money from central government?
Oh, yes. We are experiencing a lot of that pressure. And the pressure is basically based on the functions, because what happens is that for any level to come up with a figure, it is based on the costing of the functions. So the counties will say, these are the functions that have been given to us. This is approximately how much it costs to perform these functions. What we are getting is not sufficient. We need this money raised so that we are able to perform these functions. And it's a very genuine argument that they are been bringing. But the national government also says, we have also been given some certain functions, and we also need money to perform those functions. So the real determinant here basically is how much revenue that Kenya is able to raise. I think the last time I checked, we raised about, in Kenya shillings, 1.6 trillion. Mm-hmm. That would be probably, I don't know how much that is in US dollars, divided by 100.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yes.
So so that's the money coming from the central government.
Nationally raised revenues.
Nationally raised revenue, rather. Yes. What about at county level? What are the sources of revenue at county level, apart from that coming from central government?
Yes. At the county levels, there are 2 types of revenue sources from the counties.
Yeah.
One from property tax, and the other one from what we call fees and charges. Mm-hmm. Property tax, I think, is based on a rate that is levied on the owners of property in the whole country, and that one is by the Constitution. The Constitution actually stipulates that is one of the revenue sources of the county government, and property tax shall be levied by the county governments only. So that try and separate national and county. So, and that's supposed to be the main source of revenue for the county government. The other source of revenue from the county government is what I would call fees. This is the fees that counties charges for some services. Planning fees, when you are planning, building licenses, planning fee, building licenses, and many other of those fees that the county charges, parking fees. And then there are also some revenues that they get from housing. Maybe counties have got housing estates, which they also charge, and business licensing. All businesses pay a county fee. And they also have markets. All counties have various markets where they charge market fees. And when you want to go and sell inside the market, you also pay. So there are basically two types of the revenues, that the property taxes and what we collectively call fees and charges. So those are the two main sources of revenue for the county. Collectively, I think they're about 20% of the total revenues of the county government. 80% is from the nationally raised revenues.
Okay. Tell me, has that not resulted in the citizens feeling that they are being overtaxed? Because I'm being taxed to finance the county, I'm being taxed to finance the central government. Am I correct in that assessment, that the citizens must feel a bit of pain compared to what they were paying before devolution?
No, what they are being charged, there's nothing extra that has come. Yes. Well, first, yes, the citizens feel they're being overcharged. We'll always feel that. but because of devolution, there has been no extra charge. The fees and charges that county governments are charging now is what initially we used to have local authorities. Yes. Local governments.
Yes.
And the local governments were charging the same thing. So that is just a revenue source that was being charged by the local governments that has simply been taken over by the county government. The property tax has always been charged in the country. It was always charged by the local government. So the local governments were charging it. It has been taken over by the county government. So the revenue sources were already existing, and they were being charged by the local authorities then, and they are being charged now. So there is no extra revenue or extra charge that has been introduced for the purposes of because of devolution. So there's nothing new that has been introduced.
Wonderful. Those that are joining us, we are live on Heart and Soul television, and we are also live on the Human Rights Association website and Facebook. Patrick, tell me, in a nutshell, do you think the devolution has had a positive or negative impact on Kenya's economy?
Trevor, maybe when I get some point, I'll invite you to Kenya to come and see for yourself.
Right.
The most wonderful thing that has ever happened to our country is embracing devolution. We've had devolution for the last 6 years. In approximately over 50% of the counties, they will tell you that the economic development that they have seen in the last 6 years is more than they have seen since independence. I'll tell you, Trevor, we used to have counties in the northern part of our country which had never seen a tarmac road since independence. But now all counties have at least several kilometers of tarmac roads in our country. The biggest improvement has been in the health sector. Because of the money that the counties have, the number of physical health centers that have increased, but more importantly, the quality of the health centers. We now have in all our 47 counties the ability to perform, I don't know, I'm not a health expert, let me call it simple operations. For example, cesarean section. And especially some of our patients in some of these counties would have to travel to big cities for performance of this cesarean section. Now, it has been agreed that all counties will have what we call a level 5 hospital. All counties must have what we call a level 5 hospital. Level 5 hospital is the top level hospital where they can perform all types of operations, including dialysis. Actually, in all our counties now, they can perform dialysis, kidney dialysis in all the 47 counties. But I think whereas we have moved that fast, we need to catch up in terms of personnel. We are not moving very fast in training the personnel, because for you to have those facilities, you also have to have the personnel to do with it. So it has been wonderful, that one I can assure you. The biggest areas has been in water, health, road transport, and trade. It has really helped.
So from what you're saying, Patrick, I get the sense that the local communities must feel empowered. They must feel that they're closer to economic activity and they're no longer marginalized. Is that what you're saying?
Precisely. And let me, if you know the map of Kenya, Kenya was basically established, we call it a railway country, what we used to call Kenya-Uganda Railway. And almost 2/3 of the economic activities in Kenya follow the railway line. And which means that the upper part of the country, the one which borders Somalia, the one which borders Southern Sudan, the one which borders Ethiopia, for many years was called marginalized. And if you traveled to those countries, they would ask you, how is Kenya? Because they never felt they were part of Kenya.
Right.
Yes, but today, because each county has its own resources, and these resources are assured, and whether the counties spend the money or not, the money never comes back to the national government. Once money has been appropriated to the county, that is county money. You spend it, you don't spend it, it remains in your account. And the result has been very profound, in the sense that the number of developments that have happened within those 6 years is very, very, it has been very, very encouraging. And so those communities which initially never felt being part of the country now feel that they are part of Kenya. And remember, part of the secondary formula has an element of poverty. So a very big percentage of the money is disbursed based on your poverty index. So the poorer the counties, the more money they get. And then you can imagine if this money comes on an annual basis. So there has been a lot of improvement in this county, coupled by the fact that the national government, which is in charge of education was not devolved to ensure that there are standards which have been maintained. So national government is in charge of education, and as we speak, we now have the primary school is free, and secondary school tuition is also free. So this has also helped. We do now have 100% transition from primary school to secondary school. That is 100% now, and it has been improving. What that means is that the level of education has also been going up. So the people at the local levels have been taking advantage of the opportunities that are being created by the fact that counties now are able to spend all their money within a particular county. So yes, the what we used to call marginalized community are among the communities that have benefited more than any other community. Actually, the marginalized community have benefited most from devolution than, I would say, Nairobi, which is the most urbanized. Nairobi, there has been not so much different. Nairobi was already used to having a lot of revenues, so the increase in revenue has been marginal. But for the marginalized country, where the increase in revenue would be 1,000-fold.
What about the issue of capacity for service delivery at county level? Did you encounter that problem? I mean, devolution is 6 years old in Kenya. Have the capacity issue been a hindrance, or they've been addressed?
It is, I wouldn't call it a hindrance, but I would call it still a challenge, because all of a sudden the number of functions that have been transferred to the counties have increased. But remember, Trevor, if we take the example of health or even agriculture, once the function was transferred to the county, all the staff in that county that was performing that function, all the doctors, the nurses, the clinical officers, he automatically became staff of that county. So the function was transferred to the county, but so were the staff. So at that particular moment, there wasn't a very big challenge. The same thing with the agriculture and the same thing with all others. However, we realized that the capacity is still a bit low compared to what the people actually want in terms of service delivery. In the national government, there is the Constitution has a specific provision that states it will be the responsibility of the national government to build the capacity of the county governments to be able to perform their responsibilities. So within the Ministry of Devolution, one of the departments here is called Capacity Building and Technical Assistance, whose responsibilities is to, in conjunction with the county governments, identify the various challenges they have in capacity and develop various programs for intervention. But the county governments also, because of the funding that they get, also have a responsibility to build their own capacity. County governments now are employing their own doctors, they are employing their own agricultural officers, and they are maintaining them. So yes, during this transition period, we expected there to be a bit of a gap between the actual numbers and whatever is required. But as time goes by, that capacity is being improved. So we expect things to be improved. But the national government has a program for capacity building the county government. The National Treasury, for example, which is not in charge of public finance, has, in conjunction with our Kenya School of Government, we have a whole institution that is responsible for training national government officials. They have a program that runs throughout the year of training county government officials on matters public finance, including, I don't know whether you still have IFMIS in your country. We have IFMIS in most English-speaking countries in Africa, how to manage IFMIS and how to manage accounting, using the new accounting standard, all matters of public finance. So the National Treasury runs that program. So we have cohorts coming in and going out. So throughout the year, the national government ensures that we build the capacity in public financial management of county governments. So yes, capacity is an issue, but the national government has got a very specific intervention on that area.
Our guest last week, Patrick, was Professor Tim Murithi, who is in Cape Town. And the professors did say to me that there is sometimes a tendency to devolve certain negative aspects of the mindset, and that we've had corruption being devolved from central government to the county. Has that been your experience?
Well, yes, it is one of the biggest cancers we have in our country. For some reason, but I do hope that the various measures the government has put in place will try to address them. But yes, it is true that we have one of the biggest challenges we have at the county government issues to do with corruption. And that's something that I think the national government is trying to formulate a way in which we can address them. Of course, we have the agencies which are responsible for enforcing law and order. And we have had quite a number of senior, including governors, I think you may have read in the papers, being arrested because of corruption. So yes, that has happened. And of course, the agencies are taking action. But I think, like you rightfully said, the best intervention would be the mindset, to try and change that mindset. Not arresting is going on, but arresting doesn't seem to be curtailing the flow. So I think probably an intervention more focused on changing the mindset of people to move away from corruption.
I get a sense reading around, Patrick, and correct me if I'm wrong again, that as far as land is concerned, there continues to be land grievances. And to some extent, 2007, 2008, land grievances were big there. That certain communities still feel that their land claims, because they are minority communities, are not being taken, are not being resolved. Is that something that you're encountering?
Well, at my position here, we do not encounter such issues because our main challenges is a conflict between the national and the county government. But as a Kenyan, of course, I'm aware that there have been such issues. And these were brought about, they are mainly on a historical basis. When the British government came and pushed away a certain community, took over the land. And then when the British were moving out, they sold the land. But when they sold the land, they didn't sell the land to the community, which is resident there. They sold the land to the person who has the money to buy the land. And the person who has the money to buy the land may have been coming from a different community. So this other person comes in, settles in that land, but it's from a different community. So this person plus the community, the other community feels that they were shortchanged because this was their land. They were pushed out by the British, and now somebody else has bought the land. But I know there is a specific program by the national government, which is being spearheaded by our National Land Commission to look into that particular aspect of what we call historical injustices. So that is being addressed by the government. So I'm sure that, and to a large extent, I know because these cases have actually been dwindling over the time. Because over all these 6 years, most of these issues have always been addressed. And the cases are becoming fewer and fewer and fewer. But they'll never completely go away. Because if ever you bought 1,000-acre piece of land, you have the legal rights to that piece of land. But you bought that land in my community. And my community feels that, no, Trevor should not be there because it's not from my community. So there'll always be that lingering issue. But the government is trying to, and has actually, to a large extent, addressed most of these issues. So currently, issues to do with the land wrangles are very, very, I would say very, very limited. Yes.
So I have an example, for instance, in the Maasai majority region of Kajiado, that much of the land is owned by non-Maasai people, and that there's tension over the land also in the Rift Valley and around the coast area. Is that an accurate reflection of what's happening on the ground?
Let me take the example of Kajiado. Incidentally, by the way, I live in Kajiado.
Oh, that's good.
Yes. Yes, in Kajiado, the Kajiado belonged to the Maasai community. And it was a very big, Kajiado is very vast geographically. But in the course of time, the owners of the land started selling the land. And of course, what would happen is that the people who will buy the land will probably be people from outside Kajiado. I am not a Maasai myself, but I bought land in Kajiado. So, and that is what has happened, mainly because Kajiado is next to Nairobi. So it was possible to acquire a piece of land near Nairobi, but at an affordable price. And that's what has happened. There could be a bit of tension here and there, but it is something that can be resolved because it is not a case of anybody invading anybody's land. It's a question of willing seller, willing buyer, but in the course of time, maybe issues arise. But I think the biggest challenge is what you mentioned in the Coast Province.
Yeah.
Province is where the biggest problem is because people are forcefully removed from their land. And it's a long historical issue because they're removed by the Arabs long time ago, 150 years ago, 200 years ago. And then the Arab created a strip along the coast, which belonged, I think, to the king of Oman. Up to now, there are people from Oman who claim ownership of land in Kenya because of an agreement that was signed by the Sultan and the British government. And this land belongs to the indigenous people of Mombasa along the coastal region. So this I would then call it a serious issue because it was not on a willing buyer, willing seller basis, but it was forceful removal. But I know because our president has been there several times, they have been addressing this issue, and most of the people in the coast have not been. Actually, one of the biggest beneficiaries of this land reform have been the people in the coast because the government has now been giving them title deeds to their land. And most of them now have title deeds to their land. So I'm sure that issue to a large extent has been resolved. But we'll always have a bit of remnants remaining. But it wouldn't be a very serious issue because it has already been resolved. Yeah.
Tell me, the picture that you're painting right now, Patrick, is one that's very positive. What are the negatives that you're having to deal with that are brought by devolution? I mean, I think you're persuading me to think that devolution is a great thing. But what are the negatives that you're battling with and trying to resolve, and you're hopeful that you'll be able to resolve these negative trends introduced by devolution?
From where I see it, actually, I only see two negatives. First, yes, devolution is really a positive thing, but two negatives. One is balkanization of the country. In Kenya, most of the counties, we do have predominant communities in each county, other than Nairobi, the big major cities where all communities are in that. But in these other counties, we do have predominant communities. And what has happened is that when it comes to employment, they'll only employ their communities. And so you find that as time goes by, almost the entire civil service of a county is made up of the community of that county. And so to me, initially, previously in the central government system, everybody was posted by one public service commission. And the public service commission never looked at which community you come from. So if you're a doctor and there's a doctor needed in health center X, they would send you there. They wouldn't care what community you're from or which community you're going to serve. And so one of the advantages of the central system was the dispersion of all communities in all parts of the country. This is being reversed because more and more we find counties only employing the civil service from within themselves. We have a law. We had foreseen that challenge. And in the County Government Act, we put a provision in law that county governments, they should employ not less than 30% of their civil service from communities outside the dominant community. So there is that provision of law. But having the law is one issue. Ensuring that it is implemented is a different issue. So that is one of the biggest challenges, I would say, in that counties more and more want to employ only people from their community.
Allow me to jump in there. So what effectively you were saying, Patrick, is that the minorities in those counties are finding themselves marginalized. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, so devolution.
That's one of the challenges.
Devolution, whilst bringing in a vibrant democracy and the people being closer to power, the minorities within the counties are feeling the negative effects of devolution. How is that being overcome apart from the law that you've just cited now?
No, the only way to overcome it is by trying to enforce the law. And we have a commission in Kenya, a constitutional commission, and one of the responsibilities of that commission is to ensure that that aspect has been complied with. So each county is supposed on an annual basis to be sending returns, indicating how many people are employed, and out of those people who are employed, what percentage is from the non-dominant community of that area. The idea here is to, as we keep on publishing these figures, we'll try to expose those counties where they are not meeting the requirements. But it is quite a challenge. It's quite a challenge. That, I would say, is one of the negative impacts of devolution. Even though some of them will employ 10 to 20% of the non-dominant communities, but the dominant community, in most cases, they employ over 80%. And that could be, I would say that is still a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Which other negative factors? You said there's 2 or 3. Which other negative?
What you mentioned earlier, the issue of corruption. Yes. So it is still a big challenge from what we read in the newspapers. It's an area that we really need, because I think the resources that are sent to the county governments for development purposes, if all of it were really utilized for that purpose, the improvement would have been much, much better than we see now. But we still have those cases of corruption. Even though, Trevor, some people argue that I don't know whether it is true, there's what we call good corruption and bad corruption.
Right.
The distinction here is that if the people at the county, that even when they engage in corruption, because the level of corruption is at a lower level, they end up investing all that money in the same county. They do not take it outside the country because the money is not so big, so they'll invest it in the county. So they call that good corruption. I don't know. But I would say that that's a big challenge that we have.
That's interesting.
Yes,
it's so fascinating talking to you, Patrick, because you're right at the center of this. Now, given the experience that you've had, Patrick, in the conception of devolution in Kenya, in the implementation of devolution, in standing in between the counties and the central government, what advice would you give to Zimbabweans who now have devolution concept as a key part of our new constitution? What things would you say, Zimbabwe, look out for A, B, C, D, don't do A, B, C, D? What would be your advice to Zimbabweans?
The first thing is to sell the idea and the concept of devolution. I think once it has been accepted by everybody, proceeding to implement any other programs or to develop the laws becomes easy, because the idea and the concept of devolution has been agreed and has been accepted, not grudgingly accepted, because we do have cases where it is accepted to make people keep quiet. And then when people are now relaxed and they are not aware, you start clawing back some of those developments. So that would be the one thing. The second thing, I think we need to retain the integrity of the state. That well, in Kenya, we need to ensure that Kenya still remains a unitary country. And that's a very critical issue, so that we do not create institutions that may try to destabilize that idea of a unitary country. That can create a lot of problems. And therefore, in trying to develop, or in trying to mold a devolution system, I think that needs to be taken care of. One other issue is that we need to be clear about the funding. Whereas in Kenya, we put it as not less than, it is not very specific. And that can create issues. So probably one of the things that Zimbabwe would need to is to identify a specific figure, a percentage, and say this would be the percentage. And then is it the percentage of the budget, or is it the percentage of the last audited accounts. And if it is the last audited accounts, how late should those accounts be? Suppose the accounts are late by 5 years. Suppose they're late by 4 years. So again, that's something that probably you need to address. Then the issue of the functions. The functions that should go to the one level must be very clear. One of the challenges we have in our country is to have a function in a very general manner. And again, let me use the example of health. We say health has been devolved. What exactly has been devolved in health? For example, if you have to do immunization on polio, by the very fact that for it to succeed, it has to be implemented in the entire boundaries of the country. That then becomes a national government responsibility, because you will not kick out polio unless you immunize all the children in the country. And then you immunize them using, I would say, the same medicine. So you don't have county A using medicine A and county B using medicine B, then you will not achieve those objectives. So what am I saying is that when deciding what functions will go to which level, let's be clear up to the small component that this is the level that is going to go there, and avoid what we call concurrent functions. Functions that can be discharged by the two levels of government. Because what does that do? It creates a bit of overlap and a bit of misunderstanding. And permanent capacity building. When you are devolving functions, these functions were probably being undertaken by people at the national level. So the national level had the requisite capacity to undertake these responsibilities. So if you devolve them, there's a need to permanently continue building the capacity of these counties or the subnational levels so that they are able to mandate that. And finally, accountability. I don't know how that will ever be achieved, but accountability is very key to ensure that people get value for their money. You talked of taxation and people complaining about our taxation level. The reason people complain is not because of the level of taxation. It's because what has been taxed, they're not seeing the return in terms of goods and services. So if there was more accountability, there would be less complaints about taxation.
So another point where I would want you to help us, there's already an argument in Zimbabwe where members of parliament, for instance, the member of parliament from Kajiado, where you come from, would want to sit both at county level and sit at central government level. What's your view on that?
My view is that in Kenya, we have a bicameral system where we have the national parliament, National Assembly, which is made up of elected members of parliament. And then we have the Senate. And in our system, the Senate is the one which looks after the affairs of the county governments. My thinking is that even though at the moment the Senate is also made up of senators who are elected from across counties, I would think that we should have a bit of representation from the county governments. So among the members of the county assembly, they could elect some of them to sit in the Senate so that they can bring into the Senate their experiences about county issues, so that the Senate would then be in a better position to appreciate what is happening in the county and then be able to develop the laws and give the guidance that is required. But I would hesitate to have an MP seat at the National Assembly and also sit at the county. That to me, I think would be a bit complicated. But in our system in Kenya, I would propose that the members of the county assembly should elect a certain number to be able to sit at the Senate, so that as the senators are discussing issues, they have first-hand experience of people who are on the ground, people who are interacting with the people representatives who are interacting with the citizens on a day-to-day basis. You know, what we would call councillors, they are with the people on a day-to-day basis. So they're able to understand and appreciate the issues that are affecting the people. And therefore, if they were to sit at the Senate, they would then present a very first-hand experience to the senators. And I would think that that would be a good idea for some of the members of the county assembly to sit at the Senate.
Wonderful. Patrick Karanja, thank you so much for being available for our show in Conversation with Trevor. I have no doubt that the insights that you've shared has helped a lot of Zimbabweans understand the importance of devolution, the do's and don'ts, and the economic benefits of introducing devolution. So thank you very much for your time, Patrick. Please remain there and allow me to address myself to our viewers who are in Zimbabwe, who are all across Africa and in the diaspora, to thank you for joining us for this Devolution series, part 3 of our Devolution series, and to thank you for watching, and to say if you don't want to miss any of our quality conversations, please press on this subscribe button so that you get an alert every time we have a new quality show. So until next time, cheers to you all.